True or false not given in IELTS reading is one of the most difficult questions to answer. The main confusion comes between false and not given. So we'll tackle that with a very unique definition of false that you have not seen before, but the most accurate definition that you need to know. Now, let's start with the first one. These are passages, parts of passages taken out from a long passage and just put here because the question that was asked was related to this part of the passage. So we don't need to read the whole thing. Let's just look at the passages part and then see if that part of the question that was being referred to is true, false, or not given. You guys can pause the video if you don't want to hear my answer and do it on your own first. But if you don't want to, let's get into the answers. So the part of the passage was saying Egyptians generally believed that stones were gods. And the question related to that part was saying majority of the Egyptians believed that stones were gods. Now, what I like to do is rephrase the question. And if I do it in my own words, Egyptians generally believed that stones were gods. So it's like, okay, most of the Egyptians were thinking stones were gods. Question saying majority of the Egyptians. So again, yeah, most of them were believing that stones were gods. So in my brain, what I rephrased is the exact same thing, which means this is true. Okay. And again, generally and majority are the same things. But also, just by rephrasing it in your head, you hear the same thing, then it's obviously true. If you don't hear the same thing, then you have to think between not given and false. All right. So let's have a look here in the next one. Egyptians used to believe that stones were gods. The question was saying Egyptians used to worship the stones. Now, right away, worshiping and believing are different things. A lot of people believe in gods, but they don't worship. You don't go to church every Sunday, and you might be a believer. So it's not the same thing. So let me try to rephrase that again. Egyptians used to believe that stones were gods. So they were thinking that stones were gods. And here they're worshiping. So they're going to a church or physically worshiping. So while thinking that they're gods and physically doing it something is not the same thing. And that's why it's either false or not given. Now, what is it? So it's not the complete opposite, which is obvious. It's not like Egyptians used to believe that stones were gods. The opposite is they didn't believe that stones were gods. But it doesn't say that. It just says they worshipped. It's a new piece of information. It's not the opposite. And hence, it is going to be not given because it's not true. It's not the same. It's not the opposite, so it's not false. It has to be not given. If you're confused or if you need more help, also get this one. This will explain things way better. Okay. Now it says the information given in the newspaper in 1990 was accurate and up to date. Accurate and up to date. Now here it says in the question, the data contained in 1990s was biased, considering the newspapers. Okay. What is it now? Is it true, false, or not given, guys? Think about it. Question is saying this data was biased, and here it's saying it's accurate and up to date. Now, what is the opposite of biased? It is, biased means unfair, right? Unequal. So the opposite of it is equal, fair, justice. Accurate and up to date means just modified latest information, but it's not the opposite of biased, which would have been equal or fair or just. Since it's not the opposite of the question, it is not false. It's definitely not true. It's a different piece of information. So it's again, not given. So you can see the approach that I used in both cases was the approach that is mentioned in the definition right here, which you need to remember for IELTS reading. False would simply be false if you change the question into the opposite meaning. And if you can find that meaning in the passage, then it's false. All right. We said the opposite of biased is equal, fair, justice. We didn't find it, so it's not false. If we found it, it would be false. Here the question says they used to worship. If the passage said they didn't worship, it would have been false. Okay? All right, so if it's not false, it's going to be not given. Of course, if it's true, you can tell. Now, this is very, very interesting. Now that you know the definition of false, you should not get this incorrect. Okay? There is one passage, and there's 3 questions based on this passage. Let's have a look. So the passage says the balanced diet is of prime importance for our health system. Exercising has several advantages too. Question number 1 says, balanced diet is the most important thing for our body. Yeah, that's correct. Not exercising. So not exercising. Here it says exercising has several advantages. Here it says exercising is not important. But here it says it has advantages. Now, a lot of people get confused here. We'll come back to that later. Now, the next part in the next question, it says again, balanced diet and exercising are both very important. So here it talks about exercising being important. All right. Now, in the last question, it says balanced diet is the most important thing. Once again, that agrees with the question, with the passage, sorry. Then it says, and exercising is the second most important thing for our body. Okay. So here it said exercising is not important. Here it said it is important. Now here it says exercising is the second most important. The passage said exercising has several advantages. Now, is it false? So guys, it's not given. The answer for all these three questions is not given. Why? Because exercising being important or unimportant or second important is not the same as having several advantages. Okay? The opposite of important is not important. But the passage doesn't say anything about the importance of exercise. It could be, for example, you can smoke cigarette. It has the advantage that it relaxes you. Is it important? No. So that's where IELTS can be tricky. That's where you really have to make sure it's the exact concept that is mentioned, then it's true. Or it's the exact opposite of that, it's false. But if it's not exact, if it's close, doesn't matter. It's not exact, it's going to be not given. All right, guys, that is the secret to answering true, false, not given. Remember that. Take a picture of this definition or pause the video right here and make sure you use this and remember this every time you attempt your IELTS reading in order to get a better band score. Thank you very much.